So in case you don't feel like watching this whole video, here's the TLDR.
Pure, unadulterated crap.
If you haven't heard, Persona 5, Atlus's new AAA JRPG, has been a failure to the gaming community. In fact, it's one of the worst localizations in recent years. Long gone is the quality that was once set by the Nintendo Treehouse team years ago. Atlus has failed, guys. Well, at least that's what I've been reading the past few days. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you this script is one of the best I've ever seen. There are for sure some janky-ass lines here, but to say that Atlus has failed, well, that's just ridiculous. This is still a good localization, but let's go over this in case you don't fully understand what's going on. A few days ago, a fan site went up by a few individuals. This site had one purpose, and it was to bash Persona 5's localization, referring to it as a disgrace. This was followed by websites like Kotaku and Polygon writing similar articles, and of course, NeoGAF had to jump in as well. More on that later. The site details several cherry-picked examples listing why this localization is such a disgrace. And like I mentioned previously, Persona 5 does have some jank. There are times when I read a line where it feels stilted, like the text was directly translated. Those times, however, are few and far between within the actual game. To compare this to a fan translation, as someone who plays them frequently, that's, again, ludicrous. I never once questioned my understanding of the dialogue. The meaning was always intact. To me, this is the most important part of the localization process. Even if a translated product comes out sounding smoother, if the meaning was changed in any way, that's what's truly a failure to me. Writer states then in response to this mindset that he understands, but it's wrong to want an exact translation, because the actual intent is more important, and well, I agree. I'm not saying I prefer this type of dialogue, I'm merely stating that as a whole, this script is well done. Its only faults end up being that a few lines are a little weird, which is the error I prefer, something being a bit too direct, to the alternative if there's going to be one of these errors. But since we're in agreement here, I wonder what this group's opinions would be on the localization of something like Fire Emblem Fates, one that completely changes many lines of dialogue, removing the original Japanese meaning, the intent, sometimes outright removing them, destroying characterization, inserting memes where there is no reason for them to be, and much more. That's right, they held it as a shining example of what localization should be. That's a little weird. Though I guess us gamers is too dumb to understand, right? Although Kotaku and Polygon might not be as smart as they seem to think. As I mentioned, these two websites jumped on the hate train with NeoGAF. Of them, I want to talk about Kotaku, specifically the article titled, "This Might Be Persona 5's Biggest Localization Fail." This article talks in length about Nathaniel Chapman, a game developer who was criticizing a quiz question in Persona 5 that dealt with the characters on shogi pieces. However, many people, including some developers of the game, have messaged him stating his claim is false, and the correct characters are used. I won't go into too much detail about this myself, as it actually requires a very good understanding of the Japanese language to see why someone could think it's mistaken, and why the localization is in fact correct. However, I do want to read an excerpt from the Best Mom Ava's blog post about this, which I suggest you check out if you want the full details. In conclusion, the translator who was in charge of this line of dialogue in the English localization of Persona 5 was not only correct, but has demonstrated a great deal of respect for the culture of the source material. There's nothing in this translation that could be considered a fail, save that it expects a high degree of Japanese culture insight from the player. This article is also still up, rearing its false headline in case you're curious, at least at the time of recording this. Now, let's take a step back, as I'm not done with the fan site. Not only does this group lack an understanding of Japanese, but they don't seem to fully grasp English. I mentioned a few times at this point that these lines are cherry-picked, leading to some misleading choices. Let's take this one for instance.
Are you a part-timer? I'm surprised this place can afford one.
That's exactly the case.
The writer states that this is a bad localization because the character states that's exactly the case, when it is, well, not the case. This delivery is what we call deadpan. This is more common in English than Japanese, so you could say this is a very good localization choice. Another example is this line, that while yes it is awkward, it's not bad localization, and here's why.
Hey, me near, okay? Here I go. Notice anything?
This character is meant to be an awkward need. Her name is even based on the precursor site to 2chan. This is another sign of a good localization. Characters shouldn't all speak in the same mannerisms and terms. Some people are just awkward. Some people don't speak in the most proper way. This is again a point in the localization's favor. Then again, some of these professionals criticizing the localization, their only criteria is translating a niche fan game or Anthony Birch and his horrible writing style. Some things become a bit more apparent when you look at it that way. But to reiterate my point, because I am worried that someone might take this video the wrong way, Persona 5 is a decent localization. It has its jank, and I would prefer a script that didn't have a few instances of the stiffness, but it's still a faithful translation that's only fault is directly translating a few lines too close to the original text. It never changes the original meaning behind the word, and it is in no way close to what this group of individuals is calling it. It's very easy to see that they might have other intentions here. When you look at the fact that all the big names here were part of the Fire Emblem Defense Force, one of the actual worst translations I've ever seen in the modern day, you might want to think about what's really going on here. These people don't seem to have the interest of us, the players, in mind. Though that's the end of my spiel, so feel free to tell me your own feelings in the comments. I know when localization comes up, I tend to get a little heated, but these are probably the most fun for me to do, so I'll see you in the next video.